Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Soccer fans, what's going on? Welcome to episode 18 of the Stars and Stripes FC podcast. This is kind of one that's being recorded on the fly, so apologies in advance for any delays that we have because some big news dropped on this Monday, July 27th. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we finally have a World Cup qualifying format, and we basically have a schedule. So we're going to get into all that today. We will also get into everything else that Concacaf has released, including the update on the Concacaf Nations League, as well as the dates for the 2021 Gold Cup. But first, let's dive into everything that we have going on right now with the World Cup qualifying format for the 2022 World Cup, which, as you guys know, is in just over 2 years from now. But we finally have a format, we have a schedule, and we're going to get all the way into it. So let's get into this World Cup qualifying format. And again, there's a lot to break down here, so I'm going to break it down bit by bit, and we'll slide in the U.S. men's national team as they enter into all this. So first off, there are 35 teams that are eligible in CONCACAF for the World Cup. And since there had been no World Cup qualifying games before this pandemic wiped out several qualifying windows and several windows for teams to make up ground to get into that coveted hex, each team has to play. Each team has to play at least one game and have a path to the World Cup. And so how CONCACAF is trying to do this is they wanted to preserve the teams that had already basically qualified. And they also wanted to make sure that the other 3 or 4 teams had an opportunity to get into that final round, of which 3 teams will directly qualify for the 2022 World Cup. So here's what they did. They took the FIFA rankings from this past month, from July 16th, to determine which teams advanced directly to the final round of qualifying. So those 5 teams, Mexico, the United States, Costa Rica, Jamaica, and Honduras. So they have been awarded direct qualification to the final round. That will start in June of 2021. We'll get to those teams in just a second. The other 30 teams, teams 6 through 35, according to the FIFA rankings for CONCACAF, will begin play in a couple of rounds this October to determine which of those 3 teams will be added to the final round. As of this point, they took teams 6 through 11, El Salvador, Canada, Curacao, Panama, Haiti, and Trinidad and Tobago. Those teams have been seeded into 6 different groups, A, B, C, D, E, and F. And CONCACAF will have a draw next month to determine which of the rest of the teams will be in groups with those seeded teams. There are going to be 6 groups of 5 in what they are calling the first round of qualifying. And each team is going to play 2 home games and 2 away games during the FIFA windows in October and November. They're not going to play everybody twice. They're just going to play everybody once in their group. The 6 group winners will then advance to the second round of qualifying. Now, the second round of qualifying will take place in March 2021, and we know what those matchups will be. Group A, the winner, will pair off against the winner of Group F. Group B will pair off against Group E. Group C's winner will pair off against Group D. They will play a home and away matchup in the March 2021 window, and the winner of each matchup will be the final 3 teams that advance to that final round of qualifying to join the 5 top teams that I mentioned before, including the United States. Now, instead of a hex, we have the Ocho, or the Octagon, or whatever you want to call it. I don't think anyone's settled on a name yet because this has just taken place, but that final round will begin in June 2021 with matches, and we will have windows in September, October, and November of 2021. And then they are adding a window in June 2022. So goodbye January camp 2022. January camp that year, the year of the World Cup, mind you, will be World Cup qualifying matchups. And then the matches will conclude at the end of the March 2022 window. And the matches will conclude at the end of the March 2022 window. Each team will play every other team in the Ocho or the Octagon or whatever 8 name you want to come up with. Each team will play the others home and away for a total of 14 matches. That means, there's a couple of things that this means. That means that United States will have one final chance to play Mexico on the road at Estadio Azteca. So whenever that match is announced, that will likely be the final time that these two teams, for the foreseeable future, will play in a World Cup qualifier at that stadium. Also, it means that the U.S. will host Mexico one final time, somewhere here in the United States. That game also to be determined later. The top 3 teams from that final group of 8 at the end of the final round will qualify directly for the World Cup in 2022, while the 4th place team will qualify for the Interconfederational Playoffs, which will be in June of 2022. Now, the draw for everything, including the schedule that I just mentioned for the final round, will be in mid-August. The reason why they can do that is because we already know in the second round which winners of which groups will face off against each other. So the winner of A versus F will play each other. The winner of Group B versus E will play each other. The winner of Group C and D will play each other. And that means that whoever wins those matchups, those will be the final 3 teams in that group of 8. And now we can know when we will go to that team. We may not know that team until March 2021, but at least we know the schedule of who and where we will play. This also means that the United States will be going to Costa Rica, a place they have never won during World Cup qualifying. They will have Honduras. We will have Jamaica. Those games are away fans' dreams. So we're going to have these matchups, and it's not going to be an easy qualifying round because, like I said, there are 14 games this time instead of 10. And it is going to be interesting to see how these teams react to this. Mind you, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. We're hoping that everything will be in place where these games can go off safely with fans in the stands and create that home field advantage when these games pop off next June. So for the United States, as bad as we have been taking this pandemic and how bad we've been treating it and how we've been reacting to it, we have a year to get it together. Because in a year, in June 2021, we will most likely be hosting our first World Cup qualifying matches. So very exciting news. I know everyone, the Twitter is already blowing up. We're talking about it at starsandstripes.ca.com. There's an article up on there right now as we speak, so you can go and continue the discussion, talk about the teams that are going to qualify, are ready for the final round. The U.S. is one of those, as I mentioned. You could talk about which teams we think have the best shot at making it from the group of 30, that first and second round, to become part of that group of 8 in the final round. Canada has a shot. You know, we talked before about how Canada was that 7th team, and when the Hex was announced before, it was going to be the top 6 teams were going to make it, and Canada was trying desperately to get into that top 6. They were only a few points shy of catching El Salvador. Instead of saying, hey, El Salvador, you made it, Canada, you got to play in, they have brought El Salvador back into it, because between El Salvador and Honduras, which were 5th and 6th, there was a bigger gap. So between El Salvador, Canada, Curacao, Panama, Haiti, and Trinidad and Tobago, those 6 teams have been seeded into their own groups, and they control their destiny when it comes to making it to this group of 8 that will comprise the final round of World Cup qualifying in Concacaf. So Canada has a good shot. You have to expect that they are going to put everything they own into this. Panama, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Curacao, and El Salvador are going to be looking to stumble upon them. So just to keep note, we mentioned the second round group match winner matchups. Here are how the groups set up as far as the seeding round. Group A will be seeded by El Salvador. Group B seeded by Canada. Group C will be seeded by Curacao. Group D will be seeded by Panama. Group E will be seeded by Haiti. And Group F will be seeded by Trinidad and Tobago. So if the seeded teams were to make it to that second round, assume they go through and they blow away whoever else they have in their path, we will have El Salvador facing Trinidad and Tobago, Canada facing Haiti, and Curacao facing Panama. 3 really interesting matchups, but again, there could be a team that sneaks in to that second round from the rest of Concacaf. We've seen it before with teams like Cuba. Even Curacao many years ago was a team that snuck into the Gold Cup. Guyana has been a team that has surprised people lately. So we have these teams. And still lurking out there, Guatemala. They are still eligible. They're back into things, and so they could surprise people. We've seen them in a hex very recently and seen them in the later stages of World Cup qualifying very recently. So we have an interesting path ahead of us, but for the purposes of the United States men's national team, it gives us a year to do friendlies and really just prepare our squad for the trials and tribulations that we will go through when it comes to World Cup qualifying. No one's going to be perfect. We're not expecting to be perfect, but this is an opportunity for the United States men's national team to redeem themselves from 2017 and qualify for the next World Cup, the final one before they become the hosts along with Mexico and Canada in 2026. So we will see who the U.S. draws, when they draw each other, when that final Azteca game is going to be, when that final U.S.-Mexico home game is going to be. We will find all that out next month in August. So Concacaf has not yet set a date, but they said mid-August is when all of those dates will be scheduled, all of those groups, all of the dates, and who we play, all of that's going to be drawn next month. A very exciting time. There's also other stuff that they announced today. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will get into Nations League and the Gold Cup and basically put together this schedule for the United States. More after this. Back here on the Stars and Stripes FC podcast. Concacaf's been busy on this day, on this Monday. As mentioned at the top, the last segment, we talked about the fact that they had announced the World Cup qualifying format and the schedule, but also they laid out plans for the CONCACAF Nations League Finals that was postponed, along with the schedule for the 2021 Gold Cup, and also the 2022-2023 CONCACAF Nations League. So we're going to get into all of that. Let's start first with the timeline for the Nations League and the Gold Cup. So the second round of World Cup qualifying is going to take place in March 2021. While that is going on, Mexico, the United States, Honduras, and Costa Rica, the 4 League A winners from this past Nations League, will compete in the Nations League finals. This was supposed to be, if you recall, these matches were originally scheduled to take place in Houston and then in Arlington, Texas last month, but because of the coronavirus pandemic, that window was scheduled and these matches were postponed. It is not clear where these games will take place, but they will take place in the United States. We will probably find out a venue for those matches at a later date, but the Nations League finals, to complete that first ever CONCACAF Nations League, Mexico, the U.S. men's national team, Honduras, and Costa Rica will play in March 2021. Fast forward to June 2021, that was when the Gold Cup was supposed to start. But now that CONCACAF and FIFA have added World Cup qualifying games and an extended window for World Cup qualifying to take place in June, the Gold Cup will now start on July 10th, 2021, and will go until August 1st. So we have another Gold Cup that is in the month of July for the most part, except for the final, which will be on the 1st of August. So this time next year, we will be towards the end of the 2021 Gold Cup. Now, the U.S. has already qualified for the Gold Cup because they finished first in their CONCACAF Nations League group last fall. And we have the final 4 spots that were supposed to be determined in March and June of this year. But CONCACAF stated that they're going to come up with a new format to determine the final spots in that 16-team field. The teams that will be competing for those final spots: the Bahamas, Barbados, Bermuda, Cuba, French Guiana, Guadeloupe, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Montserrat, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago. Now, these teams were either collective of they placed in third in their League A group, or they were second place in their League B group, or they won their League C group. So all of these teams have a shot still at qualifying for the 2021 Gold Cup. They have not figured out how they're going to do that yet. Again, like I mentioned, they were going to have matches and they had a format in place, but that has been postponed. A new format will be taking place after that. So we'll look forward to seeing what Concacaf has planned for those teams, to see who those final 4 teams will be in the 16-team field at the 2021 Gold Cup. After the Gold Cup, after World Cup qualifying is done, we now have dates, at least windows, for the 2022-2023 Concacaf Nations League. That competition will begin in May 2022. That will be after all of the games are complete for World Cup qualifying, except for the Interconfederational Playoff. As I mentioned before, the 4th place team in that final group of 8 will qualify for the Interconfederational Playoff. That will be in June 2022. But the CONCACAF Nations League will begin in May 2022 and will continue in the June and September windows that year. The U.S. will be in League A with Mexico, Panama, Canada, Honduras, Martinique, Costa Rica, and Curacao. And then also the 4 winners of the League B groups, Jamaica, El Salvador, Grenada, and Suriname. They will also join them in League A. So we know that field. That draw will be at a later date, but we know those windows, and it'll be interesting to see if someone is in that Interconfederational Playoff in June 2022, what that means if they are in League A when it comes to games for the Nations League. We've seen it happen before. If you recall, when the Nations League happened last fall, the United States and Mexico both had friendlies in September instead of playing in Nations League, and then they competed in their Nations League matches in October and November. We expect that that will probably be the case for the one team that has to do the Interconfederational Playoff in June 2022. If they qualify for League A or League B, it doesn't matter. They will be exempt, and then they will figure out a schedule among them. So we have our schedule for the United States men's national team. Basically, starting in October of this year, we're going to see friendlies for the most part. They haven't scheduled any, and doesn't seem like there's any on the horizon, but as this schedule is now finalized, maybe we'll start to hear some news about that soon. So October and November this year will be slated for friendlies for the U.S. men's national team. We will have our normal January camp sometime in January 2021. Mind you, all of this is still pending safety concerns and anything arising from the coronavirus pandemic. We don't know these things, but as of right now, this is what the schedule will look like. In March of 2021, so March of next year, that is when our first meaningful games will be for the United States men's national team. That will be the Nations League finals, the semifinals, and then the finals somewhere in the United States during that window. And then what we've all been waiting for way too long, World Cup qualifying will begin next June. So after that, we have in between World Cup qualifying, we have the Gold Cup, we have Nations League, we have a lot of meaningful games starting in March of next year, going all the way through to hopefully the 2022 World Cup, which, if you recall last episode, will be a fall one beginning in November. So this is going to be a wild ride for the United States men's national team and for American fans. Prepare now. We have the time to get everything together. Let's stay inside. Let's wear these masks. Let's kick this pandemic so that this time next year, we're talking about all the games that we can go to. If we continue down this path that we're on right now, politics aside, if we continue down this path, we're not going to see the inside of stadiums anytime soon. So let's get our P's and Q's in order. Let's make it so that our men's national team can get the support that they need to qualify, go through this grueling qualifying process, which is even more grueling than it was before. Let's go through that, and let's hopefully qualify for the 2022 World Cup. I'm excited for everything. I'm excited for the Nations League finals. I'm excited for the Gold Cup. I'm excited for World Cup qualifying. I'm even excited for Nations League in 2022. I'm excited for all of it. I know all of you guys out there are preparing for it as well. You're probably trying to figure out how you can go all these games and afford the World Cup or even the Women's World Cup. There's also an Olympics. We don't even know the schedule for the Olympic qualifying for the men. We don't know what will happen if they qualify, because that will be going on during the Gold Cup. So there's still a lot to figure out. We have a lot of information now, but there's still a lot to figure out. To discuss all of it, there are articles on Stars and Stripes FC for both World Cup qualifying and for the Nations League and Gold Cup. So head there, continue the discussion there, and let's see what happens from here. Let's see what friendlies we end up scheduling for the fall, if we schedule any at all. And let's see what happens with the rest of Concacaf and seeing who are the final 3 teams that will join us in the Octagon, in the Ocho, in the 8, whatever you want to call it, that final round of World Cup qualifying. That will include us. We're already there. Let's see who joins us. But because this was such interesting news and it came down so quickly on this Monday, we had to get on and share it with you. That will conclude it for episode 18 of the Stars and Stripes FC podcast. We were going to talk about some other stuff. If it's still germane later on the week, we will get back to it. But until then, again, stay tuned to all of our news at starsandstripesfc.com. As it comes, we will be the first to let you guys know. Until next time, take care.